Welcome back to SUMA Observations and Conversations, a podcast by Southern Utah Museum of Art, where we talk to artists, curators, art historians, and staff about what's happening at SUMA. I'm Emily Ronquillo, Director of Marketing and Design, and your host of the podcast. In today's episode, our Director of Curatorial Affairs, Becky Bloom, sits down with Kelvin Yazzie, ceramic artist and SU alumnus. A self-proclaimed lover of mud, Kelvin spent his childhood in the desert herding sheep on the Navajo Reservation near his hometown of Church Rock, New Mexico. This enjoyment has translated into a long career of playing with clay and harnessing fire. Kelvin takes us through his origin story, from his unique name and his beginnings as an artist to his time at SU and all those who impacted him along the way. I hope you enjoy this introduction to an amazing artist and feel inspired in your own origin stories.
So when Lorraine was in charge of the gallery, and then I graduated, and she was doing everything she can to keep me on. And so when people would come, artists and stuff that would exhibit, and then I asked them, like, do you need any special display things or hanging devices and stuff, and how do you want your art, and all this kind of stuff. And then so Lorraine started going out of room, and this is our preparator.
Yeah.
And even that word preparator kind of started me to go, yeah.
I am official.
And so when someone said, hey, we have an opening over here, for work, and so I investigate, and I don't know how Lorraine finds out, but she's, oh, so I heard you're nosing around over at Coleman's or something. It's like, well, they pay this much, and I could use it, and she says, well, we could give you a little bit of raise. And so she kept doing all this stuff, and she had connections with almost every business. I mean, even as far as Escalante. And I don't know how she got those people here, but it's just because she was who she is, like you say.
Yeah.
It takes one person she had a really good way of making people feel comfortable and important and, that kind of stuff. And she was always say, what do you think? To me and stuff. I really appreciated that because we figured out how to display stuff together. Before that, they'd just give me diagrams and say, you got to do this. And you got to get a base like this and stuff, which is okay. But Lorraine had more of a, I don't know.
Well, that's the difference between a boss and a mentor.
Yeah.
I think
You're right.
Instead of telling you what to do, or even, telling you what to do, how to do it, it's more collaborative that way. And I feel like that's a way of parenting too, right? Rather than just asking, telling your kid what to do, asking them more, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
Or, what's this? Oh, well, what do you think it is? That it allows you the space to kind of learn for yourself. And I think it builds confidence because rather than somebody telling you how things are, it shows that they think you're smart enough to figure it out as like just an intelligent person.
Yeah.
And to guide you in some of maybe the more technical things.
And to me, I see that as power. Mm-hmm. And so on the reservation, when I was growing up, there was just the foundation was women have the power.
Yeah.
And so when you had ceremonies done, you better make sure that the woman does the last ceremony. If a man's going to do a ceremony, he's got to do it after the woman does her ceremony. Because if the man has a ceremony first and the woman is next, she nixes out all his whatever songs and chant, whatever. And that's just everybody knows that. But when mainstream comes in, like the trading post was the first thing, and there's always a white guy.
Yeah.
And he was always trying to swindle, So the native women started having a relationship with the trader's wife. And that made him back off and not so,
aggressive.
Yeah, like this is how it is.
Yeah.
You pay this or you can go 80 miles to the next trading post, see if you can sell your stuff. Anyways, when I went to Australia, it was the same way. And that's when I met Fiona. And Fiona, when I went the second residency, she's the one that facilitated the residency. She prompted the Australian art department or whatever that doles out the money.
Yeah.
And so she obviously had to, and her mom too. Her mom, everybody knew who her mom was.
This is Fiona Foley, who's a very famous Aboriginal ceramicist. Big deal in ceramic circles, I guess, and also certainly within the world of Aboriginal art in Australia.
Yeah. And her main thing was installations and, how to include the structure of the landscape. Because for Aboriginal, the landscape's always, it's like they have first consideration.
Yeah.
Before someone builds something or changes it, like a road or anything.
Interesting.
And so when I came back, my eyes was open a little more.
Yeah.
And when I started talking with my relatives, then I realized, hey, there's a real connection here. And so from then on, I've tried to really promote females in any situation, and even getting comments or advice. It seemed like menfolk were always trying to, like, how can I get something out of this?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm helping him, obviously, because my title says, this, but that they're not given.
There's some kind of ulterior motive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
Whereas with Luray, when we'd have an exhibit and artists would come, and she would have like a humongous party for them.
Yeah.
And we'd all show up. And then we became the people that they waited on us. But it all worked out.
So it sounds like you've had a number of mentors, both familial and familial by blood and then familial by experience or connection, that particularly women who have, really nurtured you as a human and as an artist.
Yep.
So do you want to start at the beginning?
Sure.
And tell me a little bit, or tell our listeners, I guess, a little bit about sort of, how would you tell your origin story as a superhero ceramic artist? Because you've called yourself a lover of mud, and I just, as the mother of a child who is a texture kid, loves squishy, mushy things. Yeah, how would you, tell us your origin story.
Well, to start off with, when my mom had me at the hospital, she was going to name me Kelvin. And then a friend of hers was having a baby too. But I was supposed to be born first. It's how the timeline was. But it didn't work out. The other lady had a baby first. And she asked my mom if she could take the name Kelvin for her boy. And so my mom said, sure, because it's kind of like an honor thing if someone asks you for something like that. So she says, go ahead. And then so her and my dad started figuring out, like, we got to come up with another name. And so some of the nurses that were working in the hospital, one had like a little bit of science background. And she said, Agnes, there's another name that's like that. It's Kelvin. And she said, it's named after a guy named Lord Kelvin or something. It has to do with temperature or heat or fire or something like that. And so my mom said, yeah, that sounds good. So then they swapped the name. So after that, people just said, oh, that's the guy that likes to play with fire. Yeah. and that was me. Yeah. Anything, living on the reservation, and your responsibility is herding sheep, there's no playgrounds. There's no kid area or whatever. You got to herd sheep. Yeah. You got to keep an eye on it because it's the important part of the sheep is the wool. And so they keep the sheep as long as they can. And so they don't eat lambs. They eat like the old sheep that doesn't hold its weight anymore, I guess. Yeah. So lambs are really important. So they the elders would always tell us, make sure when you put them in the corral, you know.
Everybody's safe and accounted for.
Yeah. So when I was on a reservation, I was playing with matches one day, and the fire got into the chips, the wood chips and stuff, where people would chop wood, and it went into the wood pile. So when we, in the summer times, we go out and, like, for 2 days, we get wood, and then we take it back to the hogan and stack it. The fire got into the wood pile. I started stomping. I went to the hogan and finally found an uncle. I said, I started a fire down there. So I was trying to get a bucket of water, and he said, no. He says, we got to have that water. We can't put it on the fire because we don't have running water. We have to haul that. So I said, what? What do we do? And he said, just let it burn. And we pulled out as many logs as we could, but it pretty much. And then I was on wood detail. Every summer after that.
Every summer.
And that was nobody liked that job.
I imagine.
But it stopped me.
You're like, that's the last time I play with matches.
Yep. And that's when I started playing more with mud. In fact, someone said, don't you, when it rains, don't you like to go out and play in that mud, and you make all these little critters and, people and stuff. And I said, yeah. And they said, wait, put your energy into that. It's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah.
And so then I started doing it. And so that kind of stuck in my head. And then when we butchered sheep, I would always volunteer to help.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't helping. I was playing with the guts because it felt like mud.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of became part of my psyche.
Yeah.
So when I started going to public school, the next thing that caught my eye were like pictures. And then I saw my older brothers and sisters, sometimes they pack around comic books. Like Archie and Batman, Superman. So I started reading those. And so when I was herding sheep, I started sitting down and reading those or looking at them or trying to read. And then I forgot to herd the sheep. Next thing I know, it's like it's been an hour and I should have been across that wash.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm hustling around, running, trying to get the horse to go and try to get, because you're supposed to have them corralled by dark. And it was way dark. In fact, my uncle was starting to come my way and to help me herd them in. So I started creating a problem again of herding sheep. Next thing I know, I wasn't a dependable sheep herder because I read or looked at too many comic books or magazines. But the elders and the medicine people and my mom, they got together and said it's time for him to move on because they couldn't stop me from trying to learn to read.
Yeah.
And I had no more interest in herding sheep and stuff. So then public school happened. But back then, the public school system, any school system on the reservation was not. The local people just did not like them. So they had these boarding schools where you would go somewhere like Albuquerque, from Gallup area to Albuquerque and go to school. And then you're there from the start of school till Christmas break.
Yeah.
And so there was like a big disconnect, and then there was a lot of issues that developed at those boarding schools.
And a lot of that history, horrible history has been.
And some of those didn't show up in the newspaper because they were going out of their way to cover that up. But the students knew, and when they went back home to the reservation, they let it out. They expressed themselves. And that was the reason why they didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there was these avenues of education. At the same time, the Mormon missionaries were coming around. And so my mom was talking with the medicine man about that situation because the Mormons had a program where they could take Indian students and live with a family in Utah area and go to school there. And I guess the first batch of students or first few years of students, some of the students actually liked it.
Yeah.
So my mom and the medicine people decided that's the route that they're going to try. So I became kind of like a guinea pig, me and my older brother. And so I was in Richfield, Utah, and he was in a place called Junction, Utah. And he went to school at Paiute High, and I went to Panguitch High. Anyways, this being the only Native person in the whole school, that was the only thing that was not.
And did you speak English or did you?
No, it was right off. I was set back a grade instead of moving on to fifth.
Yeah.
I had to repeat fourth. In Indian country, people that are like special ed or have physical disabilities or whatever, we consider them as like extraordinary. They're more sensitive. And so we, Navajo medicine people, look at them for guidance when they do their healing, because they feel more than us. So when I started in Richfield Elementary School, I think within the first week, I saw this bully pushing a kid in a wheelchair down like a downgrade, not steep, but the kid was yelling, stop, too fast. So I ran down on my side of the sidewalk of the street, and then I got ahead, jumped across, and told the kid in Navajo, leave him alone. Yeah. And he knew what I was saying, so he stepped aside and said something like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it? I knew enough English, that.
And you know the vibe.
Yeah.
You don't know the words.
Yeah. And I always carried around a little river stone, that are nice and round and kind of flat, and mainly to skip on water. But sometimes you carry them when you herd sheep to keep the coyotes away, especially when the lambing season is on, because that's the sheep herders' main responsibility is that season. Anyways, so everything was right. I had a slingshot to keep the coyotes and wild dogs away. But if not, there was always rocks. So when that kid stepped aside, I just threw the rock at him. And I wasn't trying to hurt him, but I hit him in the belly.
Yeah, you're trying to treat him like a coyote.
He took off to the school crying. And so I was in trouble the first week.
Yeah.
And I was labeled as a troublemaker and stuff. But I couldn't explain what the situation was. The kid just showed up crying, and he said, that Indian kid hit me with a rock, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And they called my folks or my foster parents. Finally I couldn't take it anymore because they were all like on the same page that it was
and
mine.
you were being misunderstood.
Yeah, so I just blurted out a big line of Navajo, and then they washed my mouth out with soap.
Yeah.
Because their responsibility was to teach me to learn English.
Yeah.
So that was how that school year started. And there was more bullies.
Yeah.
And there was fights. Sometimes I got beat up, but I didn't, I had nobody to go to.
Yeah.
So I just took it.
So what was your refuge in that challenging time?
Yeah.
As 9 years old, 10 years old?
Yeah, I drew a lot.
Yeah.
On anything. I didn't have drawing pads or anything like that, but there was always the paper that people put groceries in.
Yeah.
That, brown paper, and I just cut those up into a page, and I draw on that. So it was I actually started doing my own comic panels.
Yeah.
Like, this kid's picking on me. So in the first panel, the kid's picking on me. The second one, the kid's in class, I'm sitting next to him. Yeah. And then the next one, I put a bomb.
Yeah.
With those round ones, and it's got the big
like the bowling ball ones from old cartoons or whatever. Yeah.
I put it underneath his seat, and then the next panel blows up, and the guy's flying out. So that was the way I responded.
Responded and.
Yeah.
So you eventually moved to a different family. I can't remember their name.
The Barneys.
The Barneys.
Yeah.
And is that the gentleman who drove the bookmobile?
No, that was another person that lived in Hatch. But Richfield was pretty good size community. And then Hatch was like just a little over 100 people in Hatch.
Wow.
In the summertime, it went up to like 200 people. But instead of washing dishes or washing and waxing floors or doing the laundry or ironing or all that stuff I used to do in Richfield for that family, in Hatch, my chores were milking cows, feeding pigs, the horse. Once people knew that I was good with animals, I found out that a lot of people were looking for people to ride their horses to keep them in condition, to be rideable. Because it seemed like the only time they ever ride them was during a deer hunt or elk hunt. And then other than that, they're always just in the field grazing. That was my kind of like a summer job.
That's
eventually.
a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah. And so I got to ride a whole bunch of different horses, and that became my refuge. In the school system, being the only native, and they would have these assemblies, and then they would have a name of who's coming. And I'd look at it and go, oh, it kind of sounds native. And I said, oh, I sure hope it is. I said, I want my classmates to see a native person that has a career or is a professional.
In this kind of respectable role.
Yeah, and so it never happened.
And that's why visibility matters.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So once I graduated, I had this mindset that I had to be really productive and look for the best paying job and all this kind of stuff. So I went that route, but nothing panned out. So I kept thinking, I could go back to the reservation, I guess. But the people that I ran into that were on these placement programs, they said, oh, I really love my family, but I don't know if I can live there. Not with what I know now. Because it's like, I wish I could offer what I know to the younger people, but I can't because there's not a place to go.
Right. There's not an outlet or like an official kind of outlet for that.
Yeah, and there's always a non-native person that has more credentials and experience, and so they always win out for the position. So I kept going back to school because some people, especially people that knew I did art, just on the side, and then I actually started talking about why I did my imagery, and then they said, you should keep going back to school because, they didn't guarantee anything, but they said, the way I see education is if you get another degree up from a bachelor's, those people that graduate with a bachelor's are quite a few.
Yeah.
But it lessens when you get to the master's degree level, and then those people are more ideal for these positions and placement. And so I went that route, and I knew Fritz Scholder had a connection with Tucson. He was one of my heroes, art heroes, and R.C. Gorman. And those are the only two native artists that I was aware of. And they had a connection to Tucson. So I thought, maybe I'll go to Tucson because what if they show up, because they're all over the place.
Yeah.
They went over the pond,
right.
all that stuff. And so I went to the U of A. My ceramic background is what I was basing more education on. But for some reason, I didn't get in at the University of Arizona. I had a friend that says, don't apply in one institution. If you're going to make applications for a graduate program, why don't you do like 5 and then send them all out? Because if you do one, it's going to be easier just to fill out the next form. Right.
You've already done the work.
Yeah.
As well.
So I said, okay. So I was accepted like at the University of New Mexico, and they paid me some for my miles to come and visit.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is great. And they took me through the whole place, like this is where the studios are, and when you have your thesis exhibit, it's going to be here, and all this stuff. And I kept thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And they said, we really like your work, and we really think you have a lot of potential. So that was it. So I thought, all right, that's what I'm going to. So when I went back to Gallup from Albuquerque, I told my folks about it. I said, I'm going to go to the University of New Mexico. And then my family got excited and said, oh, that's great. We can come and visit. And I love my family. But at that time, and still in a way, my family's caught up in like alcoholism. And me too. I became part of that scene. So all I could see in my vision was drunken relatives coming to my apartment.
Yeah.
You know, and even the ruckus would be like, I'd probably get kicked out. And so that really made me think, and I didn't know how to go about it. And then I got another notice from UNLV, and they said, oh, we would love for you to come. And he said, we're really making a concentrated effort to try to find more minority people to come into our program. So I told my folks that again, and he said, "Oh,
great, another party."
Great." He said, "There's a bus that goes from Gallup to Las Vegas once a day."
Oh my gosh!
And so, anyways, I didn't know what to do. I started getting depressed, but I thought, well, UNLV would be probably the place to go, because it's a longer distance.
Yeah.
From where my folks live. Well, so when I found out that I didn't get in the ceramic department at the U of A, I went down there to pick up my portfolio and my paperwork, and I ran into an artist friend, Navajo, and she says, "Kelvin, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm just picking up my portfolio from the ceramic department." And they go, "Oh, you're going to be here?" I said, "No."
Yeah.
I said, I didn't get in. And she's, "What? I can't believe this." Anyways, she was in the print department. So she says, "Listen, we're going out to lunch. We're going to Rosa's Mexican food. You should come with us." And I said, "Oh, okay." Because I was just going to grab a sandwich and head back out. So I went with them. And we were eating lunch and chatting. And it happened that the print department head was part of the group. And she started quizzing me about my background. And then she said something like, "You know, Mr. Yazzie, we could use a person like you in our program." And I said, "Really?" I said, "I'll try. What do I do?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, first of all, we need a portfolio of like prints that you've done." I said, "Oh, you know," I said, I did a lot of prints, but I gave them all away, and I didn't document that. I always documented my ceramic. And then they got together, they huddled up, because we'd finished eating, and they were going to go back to the campus, and I was going to head out. They huddled up, they came back over, and they said, "We were talking, would you mind leaving your ceramic portfolio and your paperwork, and we'll look at that." And so they did. And within about a week, I said, "We got one more place if you want it." I said, "I'll take it."
So you got in with the ceramics program into the printmaking program. Or sorry, with your ceramics portfolio into the printmaking program.
Yep. And it's almost like someone set that up in a way, you know. And then when I did printmaking, it was a different kind of mindset than doing 3D, but it allowed me to bring out a lot of my ideas of what I've been going through. Not to let people think, that they should feel sorry for me, but to let other young natives say, "Look, you got to keep trying. That's all. That's the best advice I can give you. You got to keep trying, because if you can't get in that first time, do something else and then go back next year or 2 years and see, maybe the people will be different." That's what I've been doing.
So it's like a certain amount of perseverance. I mean, I think some people are like, oh, it's just fate, like some kind of divine
Yes.
intervention or something like that. But it's also putting yourself out there. Like maybe divine intervention is a real thing, but you have to be still kind of open yourself up and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And be proactive.
Yep.
To make things happen.
Yeah. So once I did the printmaking. Oh, when I was doing my practicum stuff for my printmaking coursework, I went through the regular channels because the professors encourage you. Have you tried this elementary school over here to see if, your technique? Have you tried it on them or this junior high? It's like I went to all those, but it's like there doesn't seem to be any interest. So I would fall back to the audience or the group of people that are underserved.
Yeah.
So Tucson has the state school for the deaf and blind. So I went there, and I'd been there before. I liked the campus, but I was looking at the people that were helping them. It's like, oh, this must be really hard work to try to show a blind kid something or teach him something. But when I went there to say, hey, I'm doing a master's program at the university, and I want to try to do this practicum, can I work with your students? And their eyes would get big and they go, oh, please, yes, when? You can come anytime, and all this stuff. I said, yeah, but don't you need a resume? And he said, you're going to school at the university, you're in the printmaking, you're doing a master's program.
That's all we need to know.
Yep, and you're willing to come in here. So I did, and that became another outlet or avenue. Because anytime I thought, how I could figure this out, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'll try it on those deaf kids and see what happens. As hard as it was to figure out how to teach those types of kids, I realized that when I had the opportunity to go into a regular school, it was easy. All of a sudden, it's like what I was trying to do with those kids with disabilities almost was like I was way ahead of what the kids were trying to figure out. And so I kept going back to that group. And then eventually I realized that there was Native communities within maybe like a 40-minute drive or a 45-hour drive from Tucson.
Yeah.
So I started connecting to them because they're underserved too. So learning to do my craft with those folks was fun.
Yeah.
And then they started asking me questions like, if a bully picks on you, what do you do, And it's like, what can I do? There's all, and it's like, well, this is what I did.
I don't recommend throwing rocks.
This is what I did. But I said, you need to talk to someone that you trust and try to get some help. So I was, in a way, I thought that maybe I had some answers to some of these questions that kids were asking. What happened was I developed a relationship with these kids. And all of a sudden, instead of Mr. Yazzie, they're calling me Kelvin. Yeah. and then I met this gal that worked there. And people that work at the School for the Deaf and Blind, they have like big hearts.
Yeah.
And a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, when they have to change diapers on a big kid.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, I don't even want to visualize that.
Yeah.
But that's part of, that.
Just this like bottomless well of compassion.
Yep. And so we hit it off in relating to each other and with the students. So when I came to do a practicum, the school would make sure that Donna was part of that classroom to come in because she became like like an assistant.
Yeah.
So I was trying to work with a bunch of students about something, and she would be, making sure that the clay's right and stuff like that, and making sure the kids are putting their name or symbol or their mark on their work. And because the master's program took a while, we eventually started seeing each other in public, and then I found out that she had 3 boys. Because we never really talked about our background when we were working, but once we started meeting and having dinner and stuff, I found out she had 3 boys. It was like, wow, I don't know how to do it. But they were great. They were great because when they had Mother's Day, of course, they celebrated her day. Mm-hmm. And then when they had Father's Day, they celebrated her. Uh-huh. Because the father was gone.
Yeah.
And so, and that's when I started looking at the 3 boys in a different way. One was still in elementary school, the other one was in junior high, and the other one was getting ready to graduate from high school. And
I love this. We're getting the origin story of you and Donna.
Yeah. Well, that was the foundation of my work. And then we connected with like how hard it is for these underserved population. And that became kind of like, I can always, if I don't get into this proper situation or whatever department, I can always go to ASDB. Yeah. And kids would see me, and they'll come running, and and they'll say, "Are we gonna do clay? Are we gonna play in the mud?" That kind of stuff. And, it's just so different.
Do you think? I often think, as somebody who's an academic, like there are plenty of academics who really just want to do their research.
Yeah.
Whatever, in the humanities and the sciences, and teaching is like an annoying obligation that they have to do in order to maintain their their lab or their salary or whatever university affiliation, but they're like, oh, I'm teaching, blah, 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 graphy.
Yeah.
But to me, it's always been, that's the fun part, is the research, but the real fulfillment and the real impact is in the teaching. And so do you feel, it sounds to me, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me that it's similar to you with art, that creating ceramics is something that fulfills a certain thing within you.
Yeah.
Maybe an instinct or a need, but that teaching, whether it's at the School for the Deaf and Blind or at community college or here at the museum, that is, maybe my question is that like the point of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned one of the first things that got me into the direction of art was R.C. Gorman and Fritz Scholder, and how much money they were making from their artwork, and then going all over these places. So I went out of my way to try to be in the same place, because they were at conferences, all these different events, and so I went out of my way to go to those places to try to meet with, and all I wanted to do was just shake your hand, and say thank you for your work, for what you're doing, and it turned out to be not so easy, because, well, first of all, R.C. Gorman, when he gave after he got out, left the podium, and he was walking out, I jumped up to try to shake his hands, but there was all these people around him, his entourage, people that took notes for him, or people that took photography for him. There was like 6 or 7. And he was right in the middle. And I was trying to reach in there. Yeah. Mr. Gorman, I just wanted to shake your hand. And these people were trying to keep me away. Yeah. Like, who's this crazy guy? Anyways, I finally shook his hands. And then I walked. And then they shuttled him out. They shuttled off to another thing that he had to do. And that made me think a little bit. And then when I had a chance to see Fritz, same thing. He got off the podium and he went out the first door, and a bunch of people were following him. So I went out the same direction, but down the hallway. So when he started coming down, I just pretended like I'm walking, and do like a football move and get in front of him, and I said, "My name's Kelvin Yazzie. Thank you for your artwork." And then I got out of the way, and he was looking back at me. Same way, his entourage took him out, and he was gone. So after that, it's like, so am I going to end up with an entourage?
Yeah.
Do I have to go to all this stuff and try to talk about what? I appreciated R.C. Gorman talking about Navajo culture, but it seemed like it wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. And Fritz Scholder, too. It seemed like it could be more. From my perspective, I saw more Navajo in R.C. Gorman's work, and that's what attracted me to it. So after that, I backed off. I was like, you know what? I don't know if rich and famous is really that great. So that's where the education route became more attractive.
So less than being on your own pedestal.
Yeah.
To be in the trenches, so to speak, with the people that you're not just representing, but also hoping to lift or inspire.
Yeah.
Sometimes meeting your heroes can stop them from being your heroes.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it humanizes them in a way, and that can be a good thing that you realize, wow, like they're so much more than whatever made them famous. And sometimes you're like, oh, wow, that's not what I expected. And maybe not learning what you don't want or what you don't want to be is equally as valuable as the opposite.
And in Native culture, what my grandmas and aunties would always say is, they'd always say, don't be loud, don't be forceful, wait your turn, that kind of stuff. Don't be pushy. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's almost like, well, if you're going to make it out there in mainstream, you've got to do that. You've got to almost talk louder.
Yeah.
And the hardest part was looking at the person in the eye. It's like you can tell a lot from looking at a person's eye and stuff. Yeah. So, but in Native culture, that's not an issue. In fact, a lot of times they don't even look at each other. They just kind of look at the ground and talk. So when I was trying to figure out how to be true to Grandma, it's like, but how? It's almost like a paradox. Do I really want to be rich and famous, or poor and
happy?
Happy.
And fulfilled in a way that money can't buy. We all know that one, that age-old adage, right? It's lonely. That can be a very lonely existence. And it sounds like, being immersed in a community, especially serving the underserved or the underrepresented, is can be a fulfilling, fulfilling thing.
One of the first opportunities I had to go into a school was in Flagstaff, mm-hmm. and I think it was like freshmen that were coming in, or maybe it's middle school or junior high. Anyways, there was a girl that kind of sat off by her side, kind of alone, and it just seemed like she was, cast out of the popular group. Mm-hmm. So I went out of my way to make sure I helped her when I made the rounds, helping kids, and she really loved the clay. And then she really loved my stories about clay. Yeah. And so when that residency ended, she goes, "Mr. Yazzie, do you know where you're going to be? And then she said, 4 years? I said, I don't know. I said, I think I'll still be here. And she goes, when I graduate, I will look you up and see where you're teaching, and I'm going to take one of your classes." Oh, all right. And she was in the Upward Bound. Mm-hmm. So there I am at Piedmont Community College, and there she is. She goes, "Mr. Yazzie, she's way in the back. Yeah. I made it." Yeah. And it's like, "Hey, that's that redhead girl that was in." Oh, it was that.
Is everything.
Had a real effect on me, and I thought, because some people come in to express their thanks and stuff like that for the work I do, but usually it's the the people that I'm working with. But after a while, I started getting notes from parents. They would say, I know that this is your last week. And they'd give the note to their student and say, give this to Mr. Yazzie. And their kid's been going to school all these years. And then this is the first time that she really wanted to go to school. Stuff like that. I don't know how long I kept that note, but when tough times came, boy, I just opened that and it's like, oh, sure, that's
good.
nothing. That's nothing. Back to business.
Yeah.
And so it's those. In fact, it's almost like a lot of things that I don't put in my resume are the big things that had an effect on me.
They may not be the most like professionally prestigious.
Yeah.
But the most like personally impactful.
Yep.
So we've been jumping around. We heard about sort of childhood on the res in Utah, grad school in Tucson, teaching. But let's talk about your time here at SUU. All right, Kelvin. So you were already in southern Utah kind of as you were growing up and going through school. You said you went to Panguitch High. So how did you find yourself at Southern Utah University, State University of Southern
Utah State College.
Southern Utah State College, SUSC. How did you find yourself here? And can you talk about some of the mentors that you found here? You've already mentioned Lorraine King. Yeah, tell us kind of your origin, this next phase in the origin story of how you became a student here at SUU.
Well, because Panguitch is just like over the mountain.
Yeah.
It was just easy just to apply.
Yeah.
Back then, I just did like one application. That's it.
Yeah.
But I got in, but I wasn't specific about what particular medium. I just kept it general, because I really didn't have like a art background. I mean, high school didn't. I think we did some art, but it wasn't like a regular class. And it had to do with, celebration around Mormon culture and stuff like that, where then your art's like in the bulletin board down the hall because it's, Pioneer Days coming up or something like that.
Right.
So anyways, I got in here and I asked an advisor for help, like what classes to take, and they said, well, to graduate, you really need to get the art history classes. Make sure you do that because you have to do a few of those. And then he said for the art mediums, I would say start with drawing, and then work your way into painting and the other printmaking and things like that, because your drawing will become your foundation for the other mediums. And so I started doing that. So art history, Thomas Leake was teaching art history. Thomas Leake was very formal. He was in charge of the art department and everything. His meetings, the way he dressed, he was always wearing a suit. And when he had like a gathering at his place, like at the end of the semester or for Christmas or something, it's like he'd have Levi's, but still he was wearing a tie and
like a sports jacket.
Yeah. It's like but anyway, that was okay. That wasn't that big a deal. But the more I took art history, the more I struggled to focus and pay attention and take notes and stuff. But the thing that was interesting was the imagery that he was showing, because he showed a lot of slides of structures from the old time, Roman structures and the various buildings or land sites that had to do with art movements and things like that. But what was interesting was sometimes you saw his wife standing in front of the pyramid, or him and his wife standing in front of the Colosseum. Yeah. Because it made it more real. I took some other classes where the instructor would show slides, but when he started doing things, and to me, it just made all the difference. Like he was there instead of someone just saying, "Well, this is in your book."
This exists.
Yeah, this exists, and you learn about it in your book.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And I don't know if that guy actually went there, but when T. Lee showed his slides, it's like there he is again,
Yeah.
and there's his wife, and so when he talked about that as art history, it started sinking in, and I started thinking, oh, if he made it there, maybe I could.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of like I woke up and became more involved. But what was funny about T. League's classes, toward the end of that first semester, there was these two guys that came from the Salt Lake City area, and they had a strong background in art because it was taught in their high school. So when they came to SU, they were really smart. They were ahead of a lot of us that had a little art background, and they just made their art look easy. And it's almost, I wouldn't be surprised if they used some of the things that they did in high school for their coursework at SU.
Recycle the paper or whatever.
Yes. And I'm, even overhearing them saying, oh, I just redid this one that I did for what's her name's class or whatever. And it's like, I didn't gossip about that, but it's just like, these guys. But anyways, they minded their own business, and I was sitting by one of my friends, and we were watching his slides and stuff, and this student elbowed me. He says, look at those guys. And so I look back. They're sitting at the very back row, and the light's off because the slides are going.
Right.
And they're at the back, and their heads up against the wall, and they have these paper eyes over their eyelids. And they're back there taking a nap. When we look at it, we just shook our heads. And
I feel like that's out of an old movie, like an old 70s movie.
So that, I don't know how long that was on because I never looked back. You look forward at the screen. Anyways, so toward the end of the semester, almost like the second week before finals or somewhere near there, we're sitting in there, same situation, and then all of a sudden T. Lee puts up this slide that says something like, students, please quietly leave. Get up and leave. You're free for the rest of the period. Just be quiet. So we're all looking at each other and go, and so T. League is standing up there and he says, signaling to us, be quiet. And he went over there and opened the door really quiet. We got all our book bag, and we all tripped out. And when I look back, it's like, oh no, those guys are still back there.
Because they were like so sleeping.
And so we kind of stood around the door to listen. It was still quiet, so I don't know how long it took before maybe he just let them sleep until they woke up. Anyways, we finally walked off, but it changed my whole perception of T. League. He was this art history. It was a really tough class, but then he had this sense of humor about that situation. It's like, who would make the effort to put a bunch of text on a slide and then use it? Anyways, we went to the student center for coffee. We were just laughing about it. Anyway, I looked at art history a lot more differently, and it stayed with me.
Yeah, you have a piece, at least one piece in the show that has those, looks like the entryway, right, to a Greek or a Roman temple.
And in a way, that connects to this. To that idea that T. League was in front of, him and his wife were in front of this building with all these columns and stuff. Yeah. Now, the other instructor that really had impact on me was Mark Bangeter. School had been going for a while, and then he was a new instructor. And the first time us art students saw him was when he wandered into the sportsman's lounge. And so I was taking I signed up for a drawing class with him. And of course, some of my classmates did too, because we all kind of roamed around as a group. Anyways, so we're at the Sportsman's Lounge. And I guess Bangalore had gone to the campus already and was nosing around, like, where do the art students hang out when they're not in school or whatever? And they said, well, a lot of people go to the Sportsman's Lounge. So there he shows up. And with the first time he came in, I noticed him right off because he had these turquoise cowboy boots. And he was wearing Levi's.
They're probably very clean.
Yeah. Oh, and a sports jacket. And you could tell right off it. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy was an instructor or administrator. We were elbowing each other and saying, look at that guy over there. And we were giggling. So he was looking around. Looked like he went to the bar and was asking questions, and he was looking around the crowd. And then he orders a pitcher of beer. And next thing I know, here he comes in our direction to our table. And so we're saying, oh, here he comes.
Yeah.
I think he's coming here. And we're trying not to look. And he puts that pitcher of beer in the middle of the table. And he says, you guys are the SU art students, aren't you? And, yeah. And then he says, listen, I'm the new drawing instructor. And I need to have a talk with you. And he says, when day one starts, I said, we're going to have a vote to see if our models are going to be draped or undraped. And we're looking at each other. It was like, what in the world is draped and undraped? I've never heard of that. And then he says, well, that means like we could either draw them with their clothes on or we could draw them nude. And, guys being guys, they go, oh, we get to draw boobs? And we're trying to be like refined or hold our whatever excitement. And it's like, no, I'm serious, he says. I'm serious. If the vote is draped, the whole semester, your models are going to be wearing clothes.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm telling you. So what I want you to pass the word around to your classmates is you guys all need to show up if you want to vote for undraped, because I'm going to have that vote. And he says, in my past experience working with a population where there's like a strong religious influence, people will end up voting for draped because,
it's modest.
Yeah. So he says, it's up to you. I just letting you know.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm fine with either way. But he says, but if on a personal level, I think drawing the human body is the most beautiful thing. And I thought, what a weirdo, But we all passed the word around. We all showed up. And we won by 2 votes to have undraped. And then that his statement of like the human body is one of the most beautiful thing there is next to landscape. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's almost I had to recalibrate everything that I thought of about nudity.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about shapes, he was talking about texture, he was talking about lines, and all this stuff. And I realized how that made sense in drawing. He wasn't talking about nudity jokes. There was nothing like that. It was serious business.
Yeah.
And then, so when we had our first critique, in a way, some people kind of giggle about, the proportion of things and stuff. But his critique was really cool. Because it had none, I don't know if he ever even used the word nudity. Mm. It was all art terms.
Yeah.
And then he put in his experience of that same situation coming out of Boise, Idaho. I guess, when he started drawing nude people, he had to kind of clean up his act and think like a artist.
Yeah.
So that kind of like opened the gate for me, like, oh, okay. I liked how he went through that. So my whole idea of the human body, I just started seeing everybody nude. And I started thinking,
and just thinking, wow, the proportions, how would I do that?
Yeah.
How would that arm be shaped? Or how would I do that? But he wasn't here very long. He was only here for like a year or
Yeah.
two, right? And then he went back up to either the U or Utah State. And he has a very interesting story. And I think it was like, yeah, he was murdered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of a tragic story. He became a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
He's got an interesting and kind of tragic story. But you stayed in touch with him, am I correct?
Yeah. He pushed me, and he gave me critiques. I mean, I asked him. I said, "Do you mind if you critique my work?" Because some of the instructors encourage that.
Yeah.
If you can find someone with the art background, ask them to critique your work,
get that
because
feedback.
everybody's different. Everybody's perspectives are different. So, anyways, so I got to know him more, and because I was drinking then, that was part of our gathering. Was a little bit of drinking and a lot of art talking. And then we started doing art together in a way, because when I didn't line up a daycare or someone to look after Sherry, I drug her along. And she liked Mark Bangerter a lot. And so, and we went on some trips, like to the Santa Fe Indian Market. We met there.
Oh, wow.
And we hung out. And we went through the whole... And I knew a lot of the native artists, so we talked a lot of art. And Sherry came along,
cool,
and she thought that was the coolest trip ever, compared to like camping or going to the water park or whatever in Salt Lake City,
the lagoon.
Yeah, and so I kind of forgot to line up daycare intentionally. Because she started doing artwork when I was in class or whatever the situation was. She was in the foyer area or in a classroom in a corner doing art and stuff. And she was listening to the things that we were saying. So she was almost like taking a class with me. And to me, that I could see her growth.
Yeah.
And how all of a sudden she wasn't talking like a baby anymore. She was almost talking like a classmate. Because she'd say, how do you spell composition? I said, yeah, you guys were talking about that. It's just, I don't know what you're talking about, but I just want to know how you spell that. So I could, right off, I could tell she was just picking all this stuff up. And
cool.
So when Bangerter, he went out of his way to kind of push me. And then he was gone.
Yeah.
And then I heard about what happened and stuff.
Yeah.
And so...
But he also he is the source, in a way, of the title of your exhibition.
Yeah.
Can you say again what one time he said, what I think is the greatest compliment anybody could ever receive about a ceramic vessel, what he said about wanting to be water?
Yeah. Well, I really wasn't trying to create like a body of work. I just liked playing in the mud. So any free time I got, if I got done with my printmaking project or other projects, I would just go into the ceramic room and play in the mud. And the teacher in there too allowed me to. They said, those wheels just sit there if there's not a class. So as long as you clean up after yourself, So that eventually led me into hand building, which Mark Bangerter impressed me upon, as in like, your hand building is really different. And if you're going to think art, different is good. In fact, you know what? Weird is good.
Yeah.
Your hand building is weird. And he said, but I'm trying to say it to you in a good way, because the other word for weird could be unique. And every artist wants to be called their work unique. And at the time I didn't know what he was really talking about, but I started doing more hand building, and then I realized that I didn't have to go to the ceramic department to do hand building.
Right, you don't need a wheel.
Yeah, I could just work in my kitchen, so I started doing that. And then that's where the body of work started creating on its own, so to speak.
So it wasn't like, I took this class and I was like, ping, turned on. It was something that was almost like outside of the curriculum.
Yes, yes. Just like the idea of, I mean, my classmates got used to Sherry.
Yeah.
And Sherry had her special people that she started associating with.
Right.
And they went out of her way to say, Sherry, what are you drawing there? And stuff like that. So she was learning to converse and then spelling again. She'd always say, how do you spell that? Whatever that word was and stuff. So I just saw this, if I would have taken her to somewhere like, even if grandma looked after her, I think this is better. So I went that route, and my wife got used to it.
Yeah.
And she says, Sherry's been a lot happier and inquisitive.
Yeah.
Since you started taking those art classes.
Since she started taking college level art classes.
Yeah. So, anyways, one thing led to another, and I had a bunch of these pots, and he says, "You ever pour water in them?" I said, yeah, just to see if they work.
Yeah.
Just to make sure there's no holes in it. But other than that, in a way, I was struggling with the glazing. And he said something like, you know what, you should ask your ceramic artist to see if he can do a pit firing in the next course that you take, or find out if he would consider that. So I went ahead and asked the teacher, and it was, I can't remember his name right off, but it worked out. It opened up the door for me, and when I did the pit firing, that idea of like letting someone else color it, and then I accept it the way it is. It's almost like how you meet people.
Yeah.
You shouldn't say, oh my God, I'll bet he's like this, or I bet she's like this because I don't know what.
Yeah.
Because of her earrings, or because of the way her hair is, or the way her dress is, or whatever, or even men, And then I realized that that's ridiculous. And so I realized that it takes some conversation, and maybe not the first meet, but after that, and then you start figuring out where they're coming from instead of just by appearance.
Right.
And then that made me even more acquainted to ceramic, or starting to have a relationship with ceramic. Mark Bangeter, he had that same idea of like, he went into art to be rich and famous, and then he realized that showing someone else, or he called it sharing, is what it's really about. And then that's when I transitioned and quit worrying about putting a price on something, and just say, look, I made this, and then if they ask questions how you made it, then I tell them how I made it, because for a while when I was thinking rich and famous, I'm not going to tell anybody how I do this.
Right.
It's
proprietary information.
Yeah, they'll do it, and they'll get the $1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
That was crazy. So between Mark Bangeter and Lorraine and some of the other instructors, of like sharing that art, let that young person see this and become inquisitive, like, I wonder how they did that. And then somewhere along the way, maybe they get the opportunity. So that became more of a meaningful thing than just doing art.
Right. And then you've carried on that tradition from mentee or student to mentor and teacher.
So that one time he was critiquing my ceramic.
Yeah.
Because he'd been checking them out. And he so when I started doing those ceramic in my ceramic class, the instructor was talking about non-function versus function. And I kept thinking, what the heck is non-function? So why would you want to make something that didn't work?
Right.
And so then I realized that that's the uniqueness thing. And so instead of making pots that pour well, I decided I'd just go for the visual, for the composition, the lines and the shape. And I could care less if water did.
Did
there's
pour
an
out of it.
entrance and then it poured out the spout. Because, like, I think the one you guys have in your collection is backwards. It's like the water will come out of the entrance hole before it'll come out of the spout.
Yeah.
And that was one of those where Bangeter was looking at it and said, that's when he said water. He said, if I could be water, I want to be in one of your pots.
Yeah.
Because of, like, that it looks like that if you go through the pot, it's almost like going through a water slide.
Yeah.
And for me, just by listening to him, it's like I visualize going through there. Mm-hmm. When I'm making it, it's like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to come back through here.
Yeah.
When it's done. And that kind of created kind of like an excitement about it, or like, yeah.
Or you're like on the right path. You're like,
Yep.
okay. You have that kind of moment of validation, like this isn't just an experiment or a test or whatever, that this is now, okay, now I have, sometimes it takes somebody else, through somebody else's eyes, to articulate something that you're like, exactly, now I know my path has become clearer.
Yeah.
And how I want to move forward with this.
Yeah. So when he saw container number 22, he said, now that is weird. And right off, I said, touchdown. I made it. I did it. And then we were on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And it just, that's still in my mindset right off. Is I don't think if it's going to pour well.
Yeah.
Now, when I went back to the reservation and I showed my mom some of the ceramic pots I was making, she'd listen to my deal about art principles and design and all that stuff. Negative and positive space. Yep. Non-function, function. Yeah. Then at the end, she said, "Oh, I appreciate, the things that you're telling me." He said, "But when are you going to put the water in so we can use it?" and then I said, "Mom, they're non-function. I mean, some of them will pour." I said, "But that's not why I make them." And she said, "I don't understand." It says, our culture, we make things for a reason.
Right.
Because we can either get some money for it or we can trade for other stuff. Or
it literally is on the floor. Or
Yeah, it's
I
used.
wear it. Yeah.
Yep. That's
I eat
why,
in it.
That's why lambs are so important. So every time I'd visit my mom, I'd bring an example.
A new pot.
And she'd always say, "Okay, let's bring everybody in. Let's get some cups." And so mom, no, it's art. But the thing about that is, once I graduated, I was doing various things, trying to get a job, and my mom was visiting because my dad had died, and so us siblings, we took her in. So she was with my sister for, like 6 months or a year. And then she was with my other younger brother for about the same amount of time. Mm-hmm. And then she came to Utah to stay with me and Leslie and Sherry. And Carmen Jones, who taught weaving, was real good friends with Lorraine. Uh-huh. And then the weaving lab was just across the foyer from the gallery. Uh-huh. Anyways, so Carmen found out my mother was visiting, and she knew that my mother was a weaver. Mm-hmm. And so she came stomping down to the gallery and said, "Why didn't you tell me that your mother stayed with you?" And I said, sorry. And she said, "I want you to ask her to come in and talk to my students in my weaving class." And we have odd Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I said, she doesn't do stuff like that. And she says, "Can you try?" So I said, "Mom, the weaving instructor wants you to come to her class." And she goes, No. And then I said, "Really? I mean, she, She's
adamant.
Yeah. And she says, finally, I tried really hard. And finally she says, "Okay, for 15 minutes. I said, "Okay." So I went back and I talked with Carmen. 15 minutes. Good enough. Tuesday, bring her in Tuesday. So I took her in there. And then she said, "In 15 minutes, come and get me." and take me back to your house. I said, okay. So 15 minutes pass. I go over across the foyer, and Carmen's right at the door. She's fine. She's fine. You go back.
Let her. She's still talking.
Yeah. And so she's talking to all these weavers, and predominantly women, and they're laughing over there. Oh, it got boisterous over there. Anyway, they had fun, and Carmen, once, it was like a 2-hour class. So 15 minutes turned into 2 hours.
Wow.
And then she came and took me, and she said she was nervous about it, kind of afraid, but it turned out okay, because she says those women were kind of like our aunties in a way, and so even though she had difficulty talking English, because they knew weaving together, it
was a common language.
Yeah. And then that created a new deal, because when I picked her up, Carmen Jones said, "Bring her back on Thursday. We're gonna have an open house for her. We're gonna have a potluck here." And so I took her there Thursday. It was standing room only.
Wow.
And just by word of mouth that she was going to be there, and all these people came. And then when the class was over, all these people came over to the gallery desk where I was sitting working. They said, "Thank you for bringing your mom. She's really a good teacher, and oh, what a wonderful grandma she is, and all this, and she's a warrior." And I'm thinking,
and an artist.
Mom? Yeah, and an artist on all of that. And I kept thinking, no, she's just a weaver. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, weaving is art.
Well, it's so special to have your mom's rug also in the exhibition. Aside from the fact that it's connected to you, connected to your time here at SUU, connected perhaps to her time. Yep. Also, her maybe week of glory here and honor and recognition, to have it in the museum is a really, I don't know, it feels like very poetic in a way that I can't quite articulate, but because she's been impactful in your life and maybe helped encourage you. I know you've told me, as an artist, not necessarily as a traditional craftsperson or potter, but as an artist. And so it just feels appropriate to have it. Appropriate is maybe not even the right word, but.
Well, for me, I had to recalibrate what it meant to be an artist.
Yeah.
Because people called her an artist.
Yeah.
And I couldn't contradict that.
Yeah.
Because those weavers ladies, they're taking it for art.
Yeah.
So I had to redo that.
Yeah.
And it's like, so all along, I've been going through all these coursework to learn to be an artist. and here my mom was an artist all this time.
Yeah.
So once I graduated, one of the job or work opportunities was when the states had Artists in the Schools program. Uh-huh. And an artist could go into a school and do a residency for a week, 2 weeks, or a month, and then move on to another school or institution. And so I applied for that. And the closer it got for the to do the presentation, my first presentation, and people were checking me out to see if I could be part of the program. I didn't talk in public that much, and I hardly talked about my artwork. And so I kept thinking, what in the world am I going to say? And so when it came time for me to do my presentation in front of all these school teachers of Arizona, or Utah, I almost forgot everything.
Yeah.
My notes, all that. It was almost like I was speechless. So I got up to the podium, and I swear I thought I saw my mom up there. And then I look again, and it looks like someone just left.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, hey, I'll just talk to them like I'm talking to my mom.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, for the 100th time, These
This
are
is what it is.
non-functions.
Yeah.
So when
We can't put water in it.
Yeah. So when I started talking like that, that's what, some people came afterwards and said, "Oh, Mr. Yazzie, we would love to have you come to our school." And so right off, I was plugged in.
Yeah.
And from when the school year started, my residency started. And it went all the way to the end of school year. And then summer programs became part of it, like Upward Bound, and then there's these other summer programs for students. So it became kind of like a year-round job. I really liked it. But then at the same time, that's where some people were saying, you need to up your game.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it'll make you famous. What you have to dish out now is just it's like bachelor's degree level.
Yeah.
Imagine how you could contribute if you were like another level up.
Yeah.
And who knows, it could become international.
Which it did.
And I go, what?
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing all of these amazing stories about your life and your time here in Utah and at SUU. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to share your work with our campus community and our wider community, because we get a lot of people through here for the Shakespeare Festival. And hopefully we can chat some more in the future when next time you come through
Yeah.
Cedar City. Thank you, Kelvin.
Hey, thank you for showing my stuff.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of SUMA Observations and Conversations. I hope you enjoyed hearing Kelvin discuss the people and experiences that influenced him in his artist journey. Keep having your own observations and conversations, and I'll see you next time. This podcast is edited and produced by Julia Dixon and Alec Nelson.